FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 28. Monkgu. When Kexing gave her a cold look, voice venomous, "What makes you think you can interfere with my business?" His tone was so unusually cruel that it took Gu Xiang by surprise. Her eyes widened and she jumped down from the ceiling. She started following Wen Kexing since she was little, and she knew that while he took important matters very seriously, it didn't mean that he wouldn't allow some joking around. Gu Xiang bantering with him was a frequent practice and he never showed any disapproval, so she didn't understand what this was about. Gu Xiang examined him warily, voice soft, "Master, this." When Kexing fell silent, then inhaled after a good while, still feeling incredibly irritated. He casually leaned on the window to enjoy the chilly wind and said to Gu Xiang in a bland voice, "Say, according to you, apparently I'm not at all interested in women, can only bed handsome men and harm those who don't look that good. Can't I have a friend or two just to talk to?" He didn't intend to scare Gu Xiang, but the girl had no idea what he wanted from her, so she only became terrified. She stammered, "Yes, master, I was wrong." Whatever Wen Kexing was about to say was swallowed once he saw Gu Xiang's lost look. Talking to her was such a chore since they weren't on the same wavelength. In some ways, he felt an accumulating amount of sadness at himself. These days, the lot he was surrounded with was either scared of him or thought that he was a stubborn madman. Not many would have sat with him by the fire like that, listened to him singing off-key like that, talked about old stories that only he could understand like that. He suddenly asked, "Ah Xiang, do you think I'm crazy?" Gu Xiang was stunned, and looked at him hesitantly. Seeing the dull calmness on his face without any trace of anger, she nervously nodded. Wen Kexing turned away and scoffed. After some thinking, Gu Xiang added, "I'm following you even if you are. And why do you want to follow a madman?" Gu Xiang tried her hardest to formulate her thoughts. Even when she was a child, she refused to study, which was even a greater joy when no one forced her into it, so now what she knew was very little. At this moment she realized having some kind of education was useful after all, since she had so much she wanted to say but didn't know where to start. In the end, she blurted out, "Who cares if you're mad, I still think you're 1,000 times better than others." Wen Kexing looked at her. After a while, a smile spread across his face. Upon that smile, which seemed to carry loneliness, Gu Xiang felt a prickling sensation inside, so she continued without restraint, "Master, I think you're actually a great person." Wen Kexing laughed out loud and nodded, "Good, after all of your bullshit tonight you finally speak the human tongue again." Then he pushed open the window and jumped outside. Gu Xiang asked, "Master, where are you going?" Wen Kexing waved his arms, "Ye Bai isn't the trustworthy type, that pale face of his can only spell trouble. I'm gonna go see how the silly little Joe is doing against that man, I'm worried about him." He disappeared before Gu Xiang could answer him. After coming back to her senses, she finally realized who silly little Joe was and brightened as she murmured, "Now I finally know how it is to lie without even blinking. Silly little Joe, silly little, if he's really that, then I'm the stupidest girl on earth." It was perhaps unfortunate that no one had heard her, otherwise she would have received a comment on that. She might see it only as a self-deprecating joke, but there was definitely some truth in it. Ye Bai didn't told Zhou Zishu the purpose of getting both of them out here at midnight. With his lightning-fast Qinggong, it was as if he was flying past the shadow. Zhou Zishu realized with astonishment that if the other man wasn't intentionally waiting for him, then he would have been left in the dust long ago. They chased after each other like that for a long period of time before Ye Bai stopped, hands behind his back, his profile facing Zhou Zishu. The latter had no idea why he was brought to this empty intersection, but there was one guess. He stood a few steps away, examining the man in silence. Ye Bai didn't elaborate, leaving him to his scrutinization. This man had a sturdy stature, and usually when someone wore white, they would carry either an unmatched ethereal, elegant aura or a frivolous, pretentious predisposition. It would look like some of the physical weight in their body had been lifted somewhat from an outsider's look, but this was not the case with Ye Bai. In the night, he looked like an ancient Buddha statue, and for some reason, Zhou Zishu had a feeling that the man's weapon had to be a very heavy sword to complement his unwavering stance. After a long while, Ye Bai asked, "What have you discovered?" Zhou Zishu startled, finally able to pinpoint why there was a distant feeling emanating. He lowered his head. "Please forgive this junior's terrible eyes, for I have severely disrespected you in the past few days." Ye Bai, after a bout of silence, suddenly swatted his hands at Zhou Zishu's left shoulder in a sharp and brutal move. There was really no chance to reason with him. Zhou Zishu, alarmed, flew several feet away from the ground to dodge. Ye Bai went after him immediately, his sleeves flared, intending to block all the important acupuncture points on his body. Zhou Zishu had said the other's martial arts style leaned toward the hard way, and since he himself had lost half of his core strength, he couldn't risk a direct confrontation. He initially wanted to utilize his advanced Qinggong to evade, but then he found out that it was a mistake. His opponent's attack was everywhere at the same time, and he had no leverage staying mid-air like this. As a dire solution, he kicked at Ye Bai's wrists. Ye Bai wasn't fazed and grabbed his calf. Zhou Zishu twisted his body and used that force to slide away and fall to the ground gently. When his feet touched the earth, his expression changed and he spoke in a slow, deep voice. "What do you want, sir?" Ye Bai withdrew his attack. After judging him over, he said, "The enchanted Song Qin Song was once a disciple of that damned old man, being driven out of the sect for his uselessness. He actually still retained some capability of playing instruments from his master, but all of his cultivation was destroyed with your song just like that. I first thought about how this world had already given birth to such a dangerous offspring, but turns out. Hey, rascal, you use a whip sword, correct?" Zhou Zishu's eyes widened as he took half a step to the side, hands instinctively retracting into his sleeves. Murderous intent that was long buried now resurfaced. This was the first time he was in the kind of situation where he couldn't accurately gauge his opponent's capability, but the other man knew him all too well. Seeing that, Ye Bai's lips curved up, his smile stiff and mocking. "If I wanted to do something to you, do you really think you could still stand there and talk to me? The Qinggong skills you just demonstrated belong to the one and only no boundaries, no traces branch. Your Shifu is the former lord of SIG Holdings, Qin Huajiang, isn't he? Humph, when it comes to being small-minded, you two really are birds of the same feather." Zhou Zishu replied coldly. "You are a highly respected figure in this pugilist scene, Monk Gu, but my master had passed away long ago. This junior will not let you tarnish his reputation even if it means treating you with discourtesy." Ye Bai was taken aback, crying out, "What? Qin Huajiang is dead?" Zhou Zishu didn't have the chance to answer him. Ye Bai's gaze dimmed, his expression a little lost. He looked down. "Of course, so many years have passed. It's been so long, I don't know anything anymore. Things have changed, even Qin Huajiang has ceased to exist." Zhou Zishu examined him with a frown. Upon finding out that the other man harbored no ill will and was merely speaking cryptically, he relaxed. He was sure that the person before him was the monk Gu of Mount Changming in legends, but had no idea how he had managed to retain his youthful look throughout the years. Maybe the rumors that he had reached immortality were true after all. Ye Bai held out his hand. "Let me see your sword." When it was met with no movement from Zhou Zishu, his tone became impatient. "You think I haven't seen that thing? It was a gift from me to your Shifu way back then, and no one will bother to steal it from you, so why can't I have a look? What an incompetent disciple Qin Huajiang has." That was when Zhou Zishu was reminded that there were the words "Bai" carved on his sword. He once thought it was some kind of mysterious motto, but turned out it was this man's name. His face turned sullen and he felt incredibly uncomfortable. Involuntarily, he reached down his waist and felt around a bit before pulling out an impressive whip sword. He gave it to Yabai. Yabai cast a quick glance at the sallow, malnourished skin of his hand. He scowled, scrutinizing him while receiving the weapon, always prancing around in such disgusting get-up. I hate this the most about you and your shifu. Josisha didn't bother firing back. Damn old geezer, he thought. Yabai held the whip sword in his hands. The weapon, full of his core energy, began to stiffen and vibrate somewhat, making buzzing sounds. Sorrowful reminiscence flashed under Yabai's long, thin eyelashes. He looked at the sword and thought, all old acquaintances were gone now. On the contrary, these objects still persevere and are now in the hands of your successors. He gave it back to Josisha after a long while. Josisha spoke with no indication of his true feelings. Why do you call me out here at this hour, other than to test my background? Is there? He was cut off by Yabai's palm landing on his chest, so fast that he didn't have any time to react. If the other man had intended to kill him, he would have been utterly powerless to retaliate. He stopped talking, body stiffened. However, Yabai didn't do anything else but frown. Josisha felt a gentle stream of core power transmitting from the other's hand into him, as if it was investigating inside his body. Triggered from the inside, the nails started to act up again, causing him to break out in a cold sweat. He tried to rein it in. Suddenly, the power multiplied, the small stream became a river, filling up his half-withered meridians. Josisha felt like the nails were further stirred by the foreign incentive. Everything went dark before his eyes as he staggered back. There was a shadow of someone appearing behind his back. That person shouted, "What are you doing?" while catching Josisha in their hold. They raised a sleeve to bat away Yabai's hand, and with an "oh," the man unabashedly clashed with them. Yabai came into contact with a strong demonic energy. It startled him and gave his chest a suffocated feeling. Wen Kexing was even more taken aback. He just utilized a majority of his core strength in that attack, but it was met with a seemingly untraceable wall. His grip on Josisha's waist tightened as he leaned forward a little to both cover for the man in his arms and stabilize his footing. He then inspected Yabai, narrowed eyes entirely devoid of cheerfulness. His gaze reminded Yabai of a viper dreadfully chilling and firmly glued to you like a maggot gnawing away one's bones. End chapter. FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 29. Belated Regrets. Yabai frowned slightly. His face looked even more fake than that of Josisha, in that it seemed like it had been staying stiff for so long and every minuscule movement looked strange. He asked. "It's you? Who are you?" Wen Kexing smiled cruelly and asked him back. "Why don't you introduce yourself first before inquiring me? Is this how Monk Gu teaches his disciple to behave?" Josisha, still leaning on Wen Kexing for support, was having a hard time to stand upright. He coughed really a few times, feeling like his throat was burning. He turned his face to one side and threw up a mouthful of blood. Seeing that, Wen Kexing's face darkened as he scolded him, "Are you stupid as well, Josu? Why did you let him feel you up like that when you don't even know who he is? I haven't even got the chance to touch you yet," was what he didn't say out loud as he glanced at Yabai. Josisha, busy trying to stabilize his breathing after his body being thrown into disarray by Yabai, heard nothing of Wen Kexing's nonsense. During the process, he glared at the man miserably. Yabai asked further. "Your kung fu is not bad. Whose disciple are you? And what is your relationship with this child?" Wen Kexing finally saw the strangeness in the way the other man talked. He enunciated words very slowly like an old man, and completed with his facial expressions. He gave both an irritable and uncanny feeling. Wen Kexing was not the thoughtless type. Now that the initial emotional impulse had worn off, doubt started to bloom in his chest. Before he could answer, Josisha raised his sleeves to wipe the blood at the corner of his mouth, voice gentle, "What is your intention, Monk Gu?" Ye Bai replied, undisturbed, I want to see if your injuries are still salvageable. After pausing a little, he continued. And I have never said that I'm Monk Gu, don't get ahead of yourself. Wen Kexing was not surprised as he already knew Zhou Zishu suffered from internal injuries, but the second sentence did catch him off guard. Zhou Zishu assumed him to be Monk Gu, and while Ye Bai denied this, the way he referred to that name did not at all carry a sense of respect. He talked was as if Monk Gu was his peer. Wen Kexing couldn't help but look over Ye Bai's completely not wrinkled face once again and thought, what kind of abomination is this old man? Ye Bai spoke to Zhou Zishu, the juniors will always follow their seniors' footsteps. I know Qin Huaizhang did a totally botched job of teaching his disciples, but I advise you to stay away from this man who you don't even know well. He was even more bad news than you. Wen Kexing felt like this man with an endless stomach was born to be his arch-nemesis. His chest was tight as he blurted out, don't even know well? Old man, have you ever heard about the concept of soulmate? You have stick your ancient nose into every single problem there is, and now you even want to dictate what we do. Ye Bai, already not an agreeable person to begin with, snarled, are you trying to die, brat, under his breath, and charged at him. Zhou Zishu with his unstable breathing was not at all suitable to be in the middle of this fight between these two all-around insolent men, so he cleverly retreated and sat on the top of a wall nearby to spectate and recuperate. During this time when people were currently too worried about the lapis armor and the Ghost Valley to be able to sleep well, no one had any idea that in this small alley, a rarely seen clash between two martial arts masters was happening. Ye Bai had denied to be Monk Gu and Zhou Zishu was now unsure who he actually was, but upon seeing this unprecedented level of martial arts skills, him being Monk Gu didn't seem like a stretch at all. On the other hand, Wen Kexing showed no sign that he was in the disadvantage. When Zhou Zishu took a closer look, his martial arts approach was entirely different to his father, the divine Wen Ruyu. No, even the legendary Wen Ruyu couldn't hold a candle to his son's level. The few moves Wen Kexing taught Zhang Chenling back then was pulled from his father's method, and they gave a very neutral, balanced feel. As of right now, Zhou Zishu saw that every single move from him showed an incredible level of ruthlessness, and he was unable to discern which sect he could be from with this kind of style. This to him was entirely uncharted territory. It looked similar to how Gu Xiang engaged in battle, but he seemed even more experienced than the girl. All in all, it wasn't what he inherited from his parents. Zhou Zishu narrowed his eyes, his theory slowly taking form. At the same time, he didn't know how to feel about this. All the figures in the martial arts world that he couldn't identify were gathering here in front of him tonight. Suddenly, he felt droplets of rainwater fell from the sky as the wind seemed to turn colder. After a few drops, a drizzle quietly arrived. Zhou Zishu tightened his outer robes around himself, stretching his legs and swinging them. He raised his voice to talk to the currently fighting men. Hey, sir, yeah, brother Wen, it's raining right now and I feel very cold, so how about we call this off? His voice sounded like that of a circus audience, and not someone watching two martial arts masters go at it. Ye Bai made a noise of contempt and retreated several feet. When he landed on the ground, he fixed his disheveled clothes, those ethereally fluttering sleeves torn by Wen Kexing. Zhou Zishu felt like this was Wen Kexing's bad habit, since his orientation was not something often discussed out loud, he couldn't help but imposing it onto everyone else. Wen Kexing was struggling a little. He held his chest and took steps backwards, feeling like his organs were turned upside down. He coughed up blood, his ribs aching after the other man's attack. He had no idea if they were still intact or not. Ye Bai stared at Wen Kexing silently. You've gone past your limit. If we hadn't stopped, I could have taken your life in the next 10 moves. Wen Kexing's shoulders curved forward as he stood there, glaring at Ye Bai coldly. Zhou Zishu sighed. Senior Ye, as our predecessor, why must death be the only treatment you have for us? Please go back to your mountain and live your old man life. Why dwell on your worries and run to Dongting to mess with others' business? Unexpectedly, those words seemed to act as a reminder for Wen Kexing. With no fear in his bones, he spoke up, "You're past your prime. If you are still alive 10 years later, I will be the one to take your life." Ye Bai looked stunned, like he just heard the biggest joke in the world. He immediately laughed, his Buddha stone face shifted disturbingly. Zhou Zishu was worried that those stiff lines on his face might crack if he kept going. Ye Bai replied, "Take my life." Good, good, no one has dared say that to me in the past 50 years, I'll surely be waiting for you. He was about to leave, but seemed to remember something. He turned to look at Zhou Zishu contemplatively, and spoke after the silence, "I don't know of a way to treat your injuries." Zhou Zishu's expression remained unchanged while amusement sparked inside him. Ye Bai sounded like he held him in high regards or something. He replied, "You are not all-knowing, sir, no one expects you to have a solution in the first place." Ye Bai shook his head. "Your meridians have almost withered completely, like an ancient tree without roots. Even removing the poison inside you won't help, in fact, channeling more energy into you will break your dying meridians, and you can only perish." Wen Kexing staggered in shock as he turned and gave Zhou Zishu a look of disbelief. The other man was still perching on the top of the wall, completely leisurely and uncaring. Rain fell on him and left his hair soaking wet. He looked like a dim ray of light, and had Wen Kexing not witnessed what he did in the cave that one time, he would never have realized he was someone carrying injuries. Zhou Zishu's laugh resounded in the air, "So my fate is sealed, then." Ye Bai nodded bluntly. Looking at him, Zhou Zishu came to the realization that since Ye Bai had holed up in the mountain for too long, aside from his endless appetite he had lost all tactfulness. He sighed, "Sir, why must you indirectly mock me like that? I have never wronged you before, so please don't repeat that matter, it's not a nice thing to talk about." Ye Bai stared at him silently before leaving without saying another word. Zhou Zishu had a suspicion that the man called him out here for a different matter, but he had forgotten it after the fight. He didn't remind him about it however, and jumped down from the wall. Wen Kexing was still looking at him with an unreadable expression, so he called out, "Why are you still standing there? Are you injured or?" He couldn't continue, as Wen Kexing suddenly came closer and held his face between his cold hands. Water ran down Wen Kexing's face, and the world surrounding them was filled with the sound of rain. He was expressionless, wild hair sticking to his pale face, eyes dark. Those eyes reminded Zhou Zishu of the unconcerned look he received from Wen Kexing from the tavern the first time they met. Wen Kexing started to talk. "When I was little, Mother forced me to read and Father forced me to learn how to fight. In our village, other children were allowed to play around and only I wasn't. I had to stay inside to read and practice with my sword and could only go outside when the sky was dark. When I was excited to join others, those kids were already called home by their parents to have dinner." Zhou Zishu felt like the current position was a bit weird, so he tilted his head in an attempt to break out of the grip. But then he saw Wen Kexing's dazed look, the rain clung to his eyelashes and as he blinked, it ran down his cheeks, giving the illusion that he was crying. "I really hated my parents back then, so I always sulked. Father told me that if I waited until I grew up to practice my skills, it would be too late. I thought, if I waited until I grew up to be able to play like a child, it would be too late too." He paused, the word late held inside his mouth and repeated, as if he was tasting its bitterness carefully. Then he wound his arms around Zhou Zishu's neck, hugging him like an aggrieved man-child. Zhou Zishu sighed. Wen Kexing wasn't the only one to have tasted the bitterness of that word. Then Wen Kexing let go and asked, "Your injuries can't be treated?" Zhou Zishu shook his head and smiled self-mockingly. Wen Kexing, after falling into silence, asked again, How many years do you have left?" Zhou Zishu calculated. "Around 2 to 3 years." Wen Kexing suddenly burst out laughing. Zhou felt like something was amiss with his attitude. Are you all right? Wen Kexing shook his head, retreating step by step. Throughout my entire life, I can't ever have fun when I want to. When I grew up a little, I wanted to study under my parents, but they were no longer there. Say, do you think I was born in the wrong time? How fortunate. He stopped smiling, turned away and left, leaving a confused Zhou behind. How fortunate, that I haven't truly fallen for you. One only knew autumn when the cold rain came, parasol trees dying of old age, the suffering of the cold under a thin blanket, wasting your lifetimes away, all belated regrets in the end, regrets that we hadn't met sooner. End chapter. FarAway Wanderers. Chapter 30. Rainy night. Gu Xiang opened an umbrella and held another one close to her chest while wading through the rain. Her embroidered shoe stepped on the stones underneath, causing the water to splash on her pant legs. A gust of cold wind caused her to shiver. She felt like no one could be more of a dedicated and loyal individual than her right now. When the girl looked up, she saw a man walking alone in the rain with his head down. Wen Kexing was soaked to the bone, messy clothes sticking to his body. He paid no mind to his slightly tumultuous state. Gu Xiang caught up to him and called out, "Master." Wen Kexing didn't turn to look back at her, but he evidently heard her voice as he stopped to wait. Gu Xiang ran up to him and gave him the other umbrella, internally feeling like suffering outdoors in this miserable weather was such a waste of her effort. Seeing how her master usually behaved, Gu Xiang was pretty sure that he had just been doing some indecent activities at some indecent places. So she pursed her lips and asked somewhat disapprovingly, "Did you go fool around somewhere, master?" Wen Kexing opened the umbrella, taking a few steps before replying quietly, "Went fighting." Gu Xiang asked, out of instinct, "In the bedroom?" As Wen Kexing turned to stare at her, she was smart enough to slap herself lightly, her tone serious, "Stupid, stupid mouth, what kind of trash are you spouting? You can't just say such things." "Ah Xiang." Wen Kexing cut in, not humoring her. Gu Xiang blinked. It only rained harder, the water creating a thick fog-like layer that prevented her from seeing Wen Kexing's expressions clearly. After the solemn silence, he looked down and said softly. He said, "He'd die soon." Gu Xiang made a questioning noise, unable to react to that. "Who's going to die?" "Zhou." There was a pause from Wen Kexing that might be either for him to compose himself or for Gu Xiang to take it in. As he continued walking forward, he molded his voice into the usual nonchalance it possessed. "He suffers from internal injuries, but from the way I see him go about, I assume that they are non-threatening. But today I learned that they were incurable, and he would only last 2 or 3 more years. The moment I heard that, I knew who he was. Ha! Had I known that from the beginning, I would have never followed him." Gu Xiang's eyes were wide open as she seemed to have difficulty processing the truth. After a good while, she asked cautiously, "Zhou?" "Yeah." Wen Kexing's voice was low. "At first I thought he couldn't be from Tianchuang. There's no escaping that place, and the ones who try will have to suffer the nails of 7 apertures for 3 autumns, resulting in the loss of their martial arts skills and all senses. They will be turned into invalids who can keep secrets better than the dead. At first, I thought that there was no way he was carrying the nails on him, seeing how capable he was. But just now someone let me know that he had a particular method to slow down the damage, but nonetheless he wouldn't survive for more than 3 years. This was the first time Gu Xiang ever heard about this. She barely breathed while listening to him. At that, she asked, "Master, how do you know all this?" "Me?" Wen Kexing let out a strange laugh. "Do you think I can survive until now if I don't know more than I should?" After a short silence, Gu Xiang continued. "Then, that Zhou, I met someone who escaped from Tianchuang once." A pause. There has never been someone who can evade the fate of turning catatonic, but he can. From it I can guess that his rank was great butler at the very least. He might have been the former leader even. Gu Xiang was surprised. If he was the leader, then why would he run? Then she stopped, seemingly having realized something. Wen Kexing was walking very quickly now, as if he wanted to leave something behind him as far as possible. With Gu Xiang's short legs, she had to jog lightly to catch up to him. Seeing that he only got quicker and quicker, Gu Xiang disrupted the silence between them. "Master, are you heartbroken?" Wen Kexing asked gently without looking back. "What would I be heartbroken about?" After mulling it over, Gu Xiang had to admit that she wasn't sure. She heard him laugh softly, his feet almost gliding over the ground rather than moving. "With his disguise, I can't even know for sure if he's a beauty or not. Besides, I prefer the soft type, so he won't be of my taste even if he is beautiful." Even with her Qinggong, Gu Xiang was unable to catch up, and she blurted out, "But didn't you say once that you liked the tall ones with tiny waist and pretty butterfly bones?" "You remember it wrong," he interrupted. Then he added, justifying to no one in particular, "I just felt like I'd finally found someone I can relate to." "Gu Xiang, stop following me." "Huh." In a blink, Wen Kexing was already meters away from her. Gu Xiang called out sulkily, "Why, master? Did I anger you again?" Wen Kexing had already disappeared in the rain with only his distant voice reaching her ears. "You talk too much." Gu Xiang, left all alone, stomped petulantly and cursed him under her breath, "I was nice to you and this is what I get." Then she raised her head to stare after the direction Wen Kexing had vanished to, suddenly being reminded of the image of his soaked back, his broad shoulders, his unwavering steps under the rain that didn't wait for her one bit. There was no one beside him, but he never looked sideways, like he had been traveling alone for a while now. She pitied him a little. Finding someone you could connect with or whatever was fine. But that person was a flickering lamp that would die out in a few years, so what was the point? Under the cold wind and rain, one thought they could have attained something but couldn't. Who in this world could really live how they wanted to? Could you? No one knew where Wen Kexing went that night. In the early morning, someone consistently banged hard on Zhou Zishu's door. When he opened the door, Cao whining almost crashed into him, but then the younger dragged him outside, telling him while running, "How can you be so calm in your room? Your disciple is about to lose his life." Who? After that chaotic night, Zhou Zishu's thoughts had yet to untangle themselves. It took him a few seconds to react, and he frowned. "You mean Zhang Chengling? What happened now? Why is it always him?" Cao whining sighed. "Feels like this year is his unlucky year. I have no idea how he keeps getting into these kind of situations. Yesterday someone tried to assassinate him, but fortunately Sir Zhao next door was alerted and they managed to capture the person responsible. Unfortunately though, that man was on a suicide mission and he poisoned himself the moment he was caught." Say. Cao whining paused, suspicions creeping in. He thought back to what his senior uncle Mo Huaikong told him earlier this morning. Among all of the big names that gathered here in Dongting, who was so determined to mess up the life of a kid who was not all that bright? Rather than to try to finish the job, it would be more likely that the motive was to cover up something. Even with his simple minds, Cao whining could sense that something was amiss. There was something wrong in the atmosphere. It was repressed by Gao Chang's side for the time being, but doubts and theories spread like a plague. What exactly was the lapis armor? By the time Zhou Zishu arrived, Zhang Chenling and Zhao Jing's rooms were already surrounded by a huge crowd. Zhao Jing was naked from the waist up, shoulders seemingly bleeding, currently sitting on a long bench with someone bandaging his wounds. He wore an unpleasant expression, a sword carried on his back with blood still on it. There were two corpses on the ground, face all purple. It looked like they had been poisoned. Zhou saw a hook beside one body and instantly knew that it was from the scorpions. There were actually several factions amongst the scorpions, depending on the hiring price. For instance, those who were with the delighted morning ghost and helped him lure out Zhang Chenling were not those who would lay down their lives. To acquire those, one would need to pay a higher price. It was more troublesome with these lot. There's no telling how many they were. Once a group failed, another group would advance, and they were all the fearless type. If they succeeded, they got paid handsomely. If they didn't, they would have to leave their own body right there. That's why it was not at all cheap. Who would spend this much to kill Zhang Chenling? Did they feel like the snot-nosed brat possessed some kind of intelligence that would create troubles in the future? A strange idea popped up inside Zhou Zishu's head. He thought, I've made plenty enemies back in my day, but not this excessive. His gaze thrown at Zhang Chenling carried some indescribable feelings. Zhou Zishu, however, didn't expect the young boy currently standing at a corner to be unsurprised and unafraid. He only lowered his head as if looking at the two bodies, showing the top of his head. Silence fell over him completely. Whenever people asked him something he would only nod or shake his head. Gao Chong bent down a little and asked Zhang Chenling with a kind face. Chenling, do you know these people? Zhang Chenling glanced at him, then shook his lowered head. Gao Chong, in turns, spoke even more gently, hand reaching out to pat his head. Don't be afraid, my child, we will avenge you. Tell me, what did these two vile individuals say to you last night? Zhang Chenling didn't look him in the eye and shook his head again. Gao Chong was starting to become perplexed when someone cut in enigmatically. What good would come out of asking that question, Sir Gao? We elders all know that these two are scorpion martyrs. They are merely blades, and blades don't talk, do they? What a joke. You should ask the boy if he knows something we don't instead. That was Feng Xiaofeng, currently standing on the ground instead of perching on Gao Shanu's shoulder. Because of his height, he had to crane his neck with his nose facing the sky. Completed with his mocking tone, he made it hard for people to not want to beat him up. Gao Shanu stood behind him quietly. With his scary face, he was like a demon in folk tales. Gao Chong frowned at that. Zhao Jing, on the other hand, discarded all manners as he stood up, pointed at Feng Xiaofeng and shouted, "You despicable dwarf, how can your conscience let you say those words?" Feng Xiaofeng scoffed, "Sir Zhao, why is it that ever since you took in the Zhang orphan, you didn't let him leave your side for 1 second? You and I know the reason all too well, don't think I'm an idiot." With shining eyes, he looked at Zhang Chenling, his voice sharp as knife. "Tell us the truth, boy, do you know where your family's lapis armor piece went? Is it still with you? Or is it stolen by this Zhao? No, Sir Zhao." Zhao Jing was enraged. "You dwarf, curse your family all to hell." Gao Shanu suddenly looked up to pin Zhao Jing down with his stare. Feng Xiaofeng stopped him with a wave of an arm, and Gao Shanu obediently stepped back to his place behind him. Feng Xiaofeng continued. "Did I hit a nerve, Sir Zhao? Don't be so discourteous." Zhao Jing wanted nothing more than to charge forward and teach him a lesson. Gao Chong quickly stepped in, his voice serious. "Brother Feng, unfounded accusations should not be thrown around to disturb our solidarity. Someone come take these bodies away first, then we will discuss something long-term." But then someone spoke up, "Sir Gao, why are you being so secretive? Shouldn't you ask the boy now that everyone is present? This is for his own good at the end of the day." Zhang Chenling looked up at that, his face pale, eyes unfocused. He felt like everyone was staring at him, gossiping about him, forcing him to give them an explanation, but he truly knew nothing. Zhou Zishu, who was used to blending in with the crowd without anyone noticing, felt a surge of anger when he saw Zhang Chengling's empty expressions. He wanted to push at everyone, then dragged the young boy far away from all this filth. But that was not something Zhou Zishu would do, wasn't it? To think carefully before he acted, to keep himself hidden away from the scene. These had always been his principles. Back then, even His Majesty would praise him for being increasingly calculating and cautious as the years went on, but old man Yebai had told him that he would show his tail eventually. End chapter.